All right, here we are again with doing an author spotlight. I just want to say that this is a really exciting thing for me. I'm Jesse. I am an author mentor and the founder of Above the Sun. I just have a passion to connect with other authors and see what their journey is to change the world. And hopefully, this the spotlight is going to offer insights and encouragement to other authors as well on a similar journey. And I'm very excited to do it today with Don Shipman. How you doing there, Don?
Doing well, thanks. Nice to meet you. Nice to be here.
Nice to be met. Yes, it's good to. I always say that too. It's like nice to meet you. I'm like, wait a minute, I've met you
Oh, I've
for
met,
many
yeah.
years, but it's always a good meeting again, right? We're always
Yes, yes.
meeting again. So. Yeah, let me introduce you, Don. I did go. You have an amazing website. We were just talking about the website earlier on. I did go to your website. I know I've known you. What maybe 5, 6 years now?
Several years, yeah,
Yeah.
several years, yeah.
We've met through Cascade Christian Writers, but I went to your website to learn more about you. I just wanted to introduce you and let me know how it is, like if I introduce you correctly or not. But you wrote on your website that you have been a writer since 10th grade, right? At a writing class. You have written
Yeah.
across many forms, stories, poetry, plays, puzzles, quizzes. That's really interesting. Magazine articles. You are a freelance writer, and you say you think freelance is perfect for people who are naturally curious and love asking questions. This is all really interesting to me. But yeah, you are the author of young adult fantasy series Lost Stone of is that Argonia?
Yes, Lost
Yeah.
Stones of Oregonia.
Argonia with Elk Lake Publishing. And knowing I believe that you bring just warmth and curiosity and deep love for all that you do. You live in the Pacific Northwest and you love horses and traveling.
Yes.
Is that right? How did I do?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I'm curious because I did this is not one of my questions I thought about, but I also have been a writer since I believe no, maybe not 10th grade, but I maybe actually mine was a bit earlier. I think third grade, but it was in a writing class. Like kind of what inspired you to just be a writer from that class? I'm just curious.
Oh, I was wanting to be a writer before that.
Hmm.
Um, about the time I like to share that right after I start, my dad would tell us stories. He'd tell us bedtime stories before me and my two sisters, and he told some amazing stories, and so that was part of it. But
Hmm.
then I went to school, and soon after, I think it was still kindergarten, we got to go to the school library, and I checked out this magnificent, huge volume I remember to this day about dinosaurs. It
Nice.
wasn't about horses, it was about dinosaurs.
Hmm.
And I loved that book and I loved all of them. And I must have been maybe third, fourth grade, I don't know, when
Okay.
suddenly I realized there was some person out there somewhere, sitting by themselves in a room somewhere, who had written these books that
Hmm.
I was so loving already. And right then I started thinking about that would be cool. That would be so good. What a way to live, to tell
Hmm.
stories to people
Hmm.
that they just want to read later. So it started then. I actually I actually written a story before that that I never told anybody about, never showed anybody to, and there were reasons for that. But but then when I got into junior high, we had junior high in those days, and I was going to high school, and one of the the extracurricular classes you could you could take was creative writing. And I thought, oh, I've always wanted to do that. So I signed up for the creative writing class, and that teacher was a gem, and she was so helpful and so encouraging that whole year, and actually through my whole high school years. So I always wanted to do it, and and then went from there.
So why are you not going to share that? I mean, I asked because I also around third grade I wrote the story and it's funny you said dinosaur. Mine was about a part dragon, part horse, part snake, part human, kind of this creature. I called it Ho-Draken because it's kind of like I put them all together. And I was
Oh,
in third
wow.
grade, yeah, and I still have it to this day, and it's embarrassing,
Really?
but it's exciting that. that's what started me on my journey. So you said that you're not going to share it to anybody. Is it that
Oh,
bad or?
Jesse, then people will know about me. My mother was a huge fan of magazines with the title of True Love and True Confessions. And when I was much younger than I should have been, I picked up some of those magazines and read some of them. And also, that was also early teens and all the lovey-dovey songs on the radio. So I
Mhm.
decided I was going to write one of those stories. And I got several pages into it and all handwritten because that's all you had back in those days.
Yeah, same.
But
Yeah.
that was just my first effort to actually writing a story. And no, I've never written for that market in real life since then, but it got me going.
Okay, okay. Well, speaking of that, then, so you now write. So you may not write that lovey-dovey romance, but you write uh, epic fantasy and all the interesting, nerdy, weird stuff. So what inspired you to kind of go that direction then?
Oh, that's too is a story. I s- I went to my first Christian Writers Conference. It was at Warner Pacific, and I don't know who put it on, but I was told it wasn't CCW.
Hmm.
But I went there, and they really encouraged people who wanted to write short things before they tried to write novels. And I knew I wanted to write novels, but I can do this. So I started off writing short things, and I got in writing the church Sunday school papers and things like my first publication. I actually got money for was that it was a church Sunday school paper that they used to hand out free to people every Sunday. Lots of denominations did that then. And then I got involved with a friend who had a horse magazine. And I wrote for her for a couple years. I wrote lots of articles for her, and that was a lot of fun too. But the first book I tried to write was called The Horse Girl, about a teenage girl who was going to lose her horse because her mom lost her job. And so I wrote all that and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And I got it done. Um, and it actually got picked up by a publisher, in fact, a big publisher that I didn't know how important this was. And apparently, it was Tyndale House,
Well,
and it made it through to the committee. Which, when they told me that later, I thought, huh, and I didn't even know that that was a big deal. But
yeah.
then it was turned down because they were also publishing a rather famous lady in Christian publishing at that time, Lorraine Snelling, and Lorraine is still around, but she started off with teenage books about horses.
Okay.
And so they said no to me, and I went on to other things. Then I tried to write a woman's fiction, except then I couldn't figure out the difference between women's fiction and romance. And anyway, so I fought with that and I wrote and I wrote. And meantime, I was living my life and had kids and a husband and a job and doing all those things. And after a while, and then they were saying you have to blog every week and you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do the other thing. And I hit a downward spiral of
Mm,
just, I already do a lot of things that I have to because I get paid for it. And
yeah.
this is supposed to be fun. I'm supposed to like this. I'm not liking it. I don't know. And I really thought I was going to almost quit and give up.
Mm,
And then I went to a CCW summer conference where we had the amazing Alan Arnold speak, and he was the keynoter, and I was able to be in his coaching class.
wow.
And I can't tell you enough about Alan or say enough good things. You just have to check him out if you want to. He's amazing. He used to be the acquisition editor for Thomas Nelson, and bought 500 books, for publication. Anyway, he's amazing. Um, and he said in his class, one of the things he said is if you're not loving what you're doing right
Yeah.
now, maybe this isn't what you're supposed to be doing. You should be loving it.
Yeah.
And it just hit me the way he said it. And yet I understood also that does I had permission to quit. If I wanted to quit, I could. It was all right if I
Yeah.
needed to go a different direction or just not write at all. But then it hit me that I did want to write. I just didn't want to do what I was doing. And at that point, sometime after that, I remembered, I've got this in my letter that I sent to newsletter subscribers, their first letter they get from me, that I remembered Narnia, and I
Mm,
remembered Middle Earth, and I remembered Madeline L'Engle.
yeah.
And I thought, wait, those are the things that I love, 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 love. Um, and so I started back with that, and I went with that. And as I said in my little newsletter letter, I've never looked back and I've never been bored and I've never wanted to throw things away and just go and quit. So yeah, so that's where I started and I went from there. And the more I study, um, fantasy, especially. I can't do sci-fi. You have to be scientific, and I'm not.
Hmm.
Um, but that's what got me going in that direction. I wanted I wanted nobility. I still do like romance, but I just want it to be an integral part of a story, not a story you make up to find a place for the romance to live, if that's the way of putting it. But, it's very light. And I also wanted to write for teens because also in these days, I ended up my last 20 years of active working life. I worked for the public library and was able to work my way up there. I worked at several different branches in a larger uh, regional library district, and I knew exactly what was being published and put over there in the young adult section. And some of it was great. I saw some Christian writers over there that I knew, and I go, good, glad they're there. But other stuff I picked up thinking, oh, this sounds really good. And I took it home to read. And then I'm halfway through the book and I'm like, what? Where is this book going? And I flip it over and look on the back, the border, and yeah, young adult, big letters. I'm like, this is more descriptive than anything I ever read back in the day when I read those kind of sort of naughty books. So that kind of all combined. I wanted to write fantasy, but I wanted it to appeal to the younger audience, and I wanted something that their parents would be okay about them reading too.
Hmm.
And they would have fun and love it and great story, but not something you're embarrassed to have your name on. So that's kind of the way I started off with those books.
That's really good because I wrote down some things here. So I love that two things you said that, which is great advice for many authors too. It's like, yeah, don't write what's not fun. I mean, you try to fit yourself into this hole and kind of like be something. So many times we do that. We think we're like, oh, we're marketing. We need to be marketable. We need to write what's
Yeah,
trending or what is right. And but yeah, it's not really being authentic to yourself. And so you ended up actually like being encouraged to write what's authentic. But which is I think is a really good piece of advice. Like, well, why do this? Why go through this big long journey of doing the hard stuff if you're not actually going to enjoy it?
yeah.
And then you touch on the mission, which I think is really, really cool, which is what inspires me, is that you said that you want to write um, a clean, story, because the world, and I'm guessing that you don't necessarily have overt Christian things in your book, or do you? Maybe you
I
do.
do not.
You
I
do
do
not.
not.
Okay, but it's clean, and that it's actually be able to then be accepted by 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 parents and all these things. So is that part of your mission? Is that what kind of inspires you to keep going, or is there more to it?
That's part of it. People will often talk about their call to write, and that is something I have argued with from day one. I have never seen any handwriting on the wall that said I'm supposed to write. I have talked to different people about it, and we've given some pretty good explanations about that, which has been great. But I do know for a fact that God called me to himself and that he wanted me to reach out into this world. For the longest time, I thought I would be a missionary. I mean, like a real missionary, going over the gal who was there, she grew up in Bolivia. I'm like, oh my goodness, you know what? And then she came back here and joined a, public high school. And I thought, oh, good grief, I bet she had troubles. But that I've never had a question about that. And I've done mission trips. I've done a lot of different things, taught that age group and such. So in my books, that's always there, but I didn't want to go with a specific Christian audience because number one, at that time, and I think it's still the same, fantasy is just not selling in the CBA, the Christian market. I mean, here and there, a couple of them make it through, but they really don't. Whereas it's extremely popular in the world, very popular in the world. The YA, the teens, they want that fantasy. And some of it, like I said, is great. Some of it's great, but then it's not great. And so, what I wanted to do, and I told one person this a while ago about it, that um, I my, Christian girls are not non-Christian girls, I hope, are going to be entertained and really love these books. they're not going to be told that they should believe anything. They're not. Number one, teenagers don't like being told what they should believe, but but also that they're not going to be told that. But what I'm hoping is I've got enough of my worldview and the sort of secular kind of Christian, not Christian, religious world that had been in this world in the past that we have go into detail much there. But what I hope to do is give them permission to ask the questions,
Mm.
to stop and think about, okay, I'm in a public school where, so much of what we're being taught is simply materialism. Say right now, you live a while, you have a good time, and you die, and that's it, and that's the end of it. I want them to know that it's okay to stop and think and say, maybe not. Why do I have this? I lost somebody in my life, and why do I have this hole in my heart that that person's got to still be out there somewhere? And anyway, that was it. I wanted the Christian girls to read it and love it and their parents to allow them and to just really be encouraged and such. But I wanted the non-believing girls who would pick it up to also have that same thing happen, but also to maybe ask those questions and think, huh, I wonder, maybe I should look into this. And maybe they will. And I hope and pray they do. And that's as far as the books go, and the mission for the books, that's where I'm at on that.
Love that. So like funny how you say real missionary, right? And I think that's exactly it's like I believe that, yeah, many times authors are in missionary, especially in like you said, you write these truths, but I would say it's not like what the word that you're looking for is there's no agenda on it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Correct.
Which I think
Correct.
that many
Yeah.
times this is the struggle, right? With a lot of Christians and actually when because I write, I write not fantasy. I mean, I do write fantasy, but I haven't published fantasy. I write some romance with my co-author and various other things, and that's exactly what the Lord told me as well that we don't like story by definition needs to be subjective.
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
the characters, and I believe you do this in a really good way. The characters, and this could be advice for some other authors, they go on the noble journey. They go on the journey themselves.
Yeah.
So often Christians fall in this trap, and you might agree with this, to have to then like preach or give objective truth inside of their books, but it's not
Hmm.
authentic to the characters and the journey.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like what you're doing is like, I'm going to put some truth in and let the Spirit, the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
do its own job with your book. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I hope so. And I've had two episodes when I was writing, where it really jumped out at me when I was writing the trilogy, that I had the girl who's the main character. There was a bunch of deaths that had just occurred, and they needed to deal with the dead bodies. But one of the characters, a non-human character, was there, and she starts talking to, well, we have to do something. We have to bury them. We have to go on. And then she said, well, what? And then she thought, and then it occurred to her, I don't even know what these people think about all of that. About,
Right.
what do you do with the dead that are lost? And now what? And then she thought maybe she'd offended him, and then by even asking the question.
Hmm.
Um, and then she's thinking the same thing I was for some odd reason. What did she think about all this? What did she think? What did happen after? I mean, her mother had died. She goes, where was her mother? And the people that died in that last battle. Anyway, so I just had her kind of go off on stuff that I thought I was thinking about writing it. And then it switches back and gets back to her conversation with the young man, and he explains where he's coming from. And yeah, and so that was kind of interesting. And then much later, and in a different book they've gotten, he's supposed to be an enemy. They took him in. And I wanted to, the one sometime somebody said about, complained about Tolkien that I thought might have some validity. Not much. I'm a pretty big Tolkien fan,
Same.
but that there's never was a redeemed orc. Well,
Ah,
there wasn't. There was, and they were all bad. They're just bad, and they're bad, and it works perfectly fine for that world. But I decided I wanted one of my characters, my bad characters, the Borags. I wanted to redeem one. I don't know. That's all I thought, and I got going on it. And Tonrock came into existence, and my critique group, who've read all of my books carefully, immediately say their famous favorite character is Tonrock. and he's a teenage Borag and stuff. And later on in the book, he just pops up when somebody gets injured. He goes, "Has anyone talked to the maker about this?" You know, and they're all looking at him like, no. Well, I will.
Hmm. Love
And I
that.
don't know where that came from, but it was so true to his character, and it was great. And it was fun. And yeah, I don't know.
I love that because it really does show, yeah, that no one is beyond repentance, and even that.
Yeah.
And we can nerd out so much because like my one of my favorite characters from Marvel is Nightcrawler because for a very very similar thing where it's like, well, maybe not similar, but he was told that he is unredeemable and everything, but yeah, because he has this like this face and everything. He's just like the demonic face, whatever. But yet he is a devout Catholic and and he's like
Oh,
his
yeah.
character even in the Marvel, I think it's been wonderful. It really shows that looks can be deceiving, but I love yours where it's yeah like that you it changes people's perspective, and yet God or the Maker in your situation
Yeah.
is more powerful than even um even our quote unquote sin. Like I said, I think what Tolkien was trying to do is create direct evil, which I think you probably agree with that. But I
Oh,
love
yeah.
that you're like saying, hey, we can be no matter how far down you go, no matter what your story is, you can be
Yeah.
redeemed, and those truths are missional because people who
Yeah.
read it, non-Christians, be like, wait a minute, or even Christians, but like anybody, like, hey, I'm not too far gone, right? That I can always turn around, which is such a beautiful, beautiful statement.
And I never even thought about that with Tom Rock. Good.
Yeah,
Good. Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
did, yeah, and it's good. So, which is so fun, and that's exactly what we get with like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and all these, I would say, yeah, missional stories because it's
Yeah.
like even non-Christians who don't don't know God know Aslan, and like when they hear about Jesus, it's like, wait a minute, I like that character because I like Aslan, right? And he's very similar, and so you create
Yes.
these truths with people so they could actually get them one step closer. So it's I think I mean like I know you were being joking about real missionary, but yeah, it's so good. Like you are a missionary, it is a
Yeah.
missional journey
Yeah.
to into that realm to help people get closer to God.
Yeah.
What
Well, I try.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so what, like, going into challenges and things, I mean, like, has there been, or what I'm guessing there is, what challenges have you faced kind of in that duality of being, writing that true content, but also being kind of in the regular non-Christian realm, with some challenges, and have you overcame some of that stuff?
I have really have not.
Mm,
Um, when I worked at the library, I had the unfortunate experience, I had several of them, but of people coming up to me with a book and just kind of tossing it on the desk in front of me saying, "This makes me mad, so mad when these people try to get all their Christian religion stuff and they try to cram it down your throat in the books from the library." And I had to answer this person, and it's like, and I would just picked it up, and of course, check the publisher. Well, it was an obvious Christian publication, but a lot of people don't know that. And so sometimes they can get really angry because they feel like you're sneaking up on them or something. And that's not what we want to do either.
mhm.
Also, I remember reading way back when, I don't know when, all the training I've done over the years, but one person saying, if a person, a good Christian teacher saying, if a person wants a sermon, they're going to go to church. That's not what they want in their fiction. They want a story. And so that the
Totally.
story
Yeah.
and even the word entertainment, which sometimes seems like a bad word. Now, entertainment has to come first. That's what people read stories for. They want to be entertained. They want to
Yeah.
get out of their world for a while and be in somebody else's world and whatever. And so it has to, and yet I found, especially that first part with the one character in the one book, I wasn't planning on that. But then I realized I had no answer from my character's problem
Hmm.
other than to look at what is beyond what our eyes and ears and nose can tell us, this
Hmm.
world. And so in that case, that's the direction I had to go. Um, but no, they're not going to get the gospel
Hmm.
in my books, but they don't get it, well, they don't really get it truly in, well, they do, in Narnia. I mean, you could argue it. I mean, that first book is the gospel's there for
Allegorical.
sure.
Yeah.
But as far as I wanted him to say when I first read those books, the end of one of them, when he said they couldn't come back to Narnia, they had to go back to their own world, and he was in that world too, and they needed to learn him,
That's
but
really
he had a different name in
different
that
name.
world. I wanted him to say Jesus so bad, but then he didn't. You
But like you
know?
said, you're getting to ask questions, which is what you
Yeah,
do for your authors too. I
yeah,
love that. You're giving them more questions than answers, which is such a beautiful journey.
yeah. That's what I'm trying to do. Madeline L'Engle did that too,
Mhm.
and I wish I was at the quality of writing she is. I'm not, but I'm trying to follow her example in some ways. But yeah.
Well, that brings me to, yeah, to another question. And like, I know that, we're getting a little bit to the end of our time, but I'm curious, like, then what would success, I mean, what would success look to you? I know, like, of course, maybe non-monetary success. Like, what does it look like for your books? What do you hope your reader to get from it, and what would be a successful what would make this all worth it for you?
It's already worth it. I've got books out there and I've got not that many. I have 330 people on my mailing list.
Hmm.
And I have both the young and not so young have sent me messages or sent me um, reviews and different things and have talked about how encouraged they were and how much they liked this. And they hope I'll write more books. Me too. And such. So no, it's fine. It's what I've needed to do and I've wanted to do. And it's good. Also, the whole concept of I could be dead and gone and they might discover it in 50 years.
Yeah.
And what do I know? I mean, maybe God has got a plan for it that I won't live to see. And that's okay. It's totally okay. Who was it? Not Rembrandt, was it Rembrandt or somebody else? But yeah, not famous. No one knew of him at all until after he died and hundreds of years later. And now he's considered a genius and such. So no, it's okay. It's just there've just been a couple other little issues here recently that have kind of made it feel a little more stressful.
Do you want to share about those?
Oh,
Or
just our financial situation has changed. And whereas I could feel okay about the money I bring in through retirement, that I get to spend it the way I want to, well,
Mhm.
now some of that money is actually needed to pay bills.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when I signed up for and it's like, and then I finally get my royalty statement and I'm like, are you kidding me?
Mhm.
This is what, you know, so it's frustrating, but I'm trying to pursue the more buying the copies and selling them,
Mhm.
and that's actually doing better for me than just the other.
So then, yeah. So what would like I could yeah. This is a long journey, and I've heard for some of my mentors, that it's like it's the writing journey is like just long, and I've experienced that as well. It's a journey of overcoming in of itself, and we have to kind of decide what is success for us, what are we doing, and all this on this journey of that. So I'm curious then, like if you have any kind of advice, because you're speaking about some of the challenges and struggles, like any advice to authors who are maybe in the similar path as you, maybe a little bit earlier, like what would you advise for them to how to keep going?
Yeah. I would say follow your heart.
Hmm.
If the story is in your mind and your heart, then just keep going.
Hmm.
I used to, they said, worry about, not hearing a call. And it occurred to me that very likely, unlikely, neither Tolkien or Lewis heard the voice of God telling them to write books. They
Hmm.
sat down and wrote those books because they wanted to. It was in their heart. They loved it.
Fun.
They wanted to do this, and they just did it. And I think there's a lot to that. Learn all you can, study, read a lot. Find out, get in a critique group, a good one if you can, and just keep pursuing it. If I had to quit right now, could not write anymore, I would do that if I had to, but I would feel sad.
Yeah.
I would know that I'm not doing something anymore that really mattered to me. It mattered to me. And people say it, and it sounds good joke, but these characters in my book, they are real to me.
Yeah.
They are real to me. Okay. They just about are, and I have grown as a human being through
Hmm.
knowing them and writing their story and it tying in my own story with God and what He is doing in my life. And to sometimes you just have to get out there and take that step and take do those adventures. Don't just talk about adventures, live a few of your own, which is another thing Ellen Arnold says. You can't probably write more than what you've done
Experience. Yeah.
yourself, not in every area, but get out there and do some of these things. And I have. I mentioned to somebody once at our church that maybe I should go on this mission trip to Nicaragua. And that was it. I went to a meeting. That's all I did. I
Hmm.
swear, the next minute I was on the plane. And I don't know how this happened,
You're living it.
but and it was like, okay, okay, okay. And yeah, it's crazy being in another country where it's your language they don't speak, and such, but adventures and just to try things you didn't before. So persevere. I mean, if it's what you want to do, just persevere.
And one thing, something you said right there, and I'd love to kind of, talk about your mailing list and how people can join you and all that stuff at the end of this. But something that really encouraged me, and I agree, is that you said that like you would still do it, and that's what I
Yeah,
encourage my clients and authors too. It's like, how do you really know that you're called to write? Because you said it's not always that big,
yeah,
word, but I would say exactly that. How do you know you're called to write? Is
yeah,
you if you can't not write? It's like, or if you're willing to do it for free, or if it's part of like you. I love that you said find that passion, find out why you're doing it. Don't write for other people, but there's also that journey of like how to get yourself out there. But it's
yeah,
like there's that deep thing that I'm a writer. Like I can't not this is whether it's characters or whether it's plot, it's just bubbling up.
mhm,
And it's going to be a journey of overcoming and struggle, but that's the hero's journey, right? Of everything is overcoming and struggle. It's
yes,
really having a child is overcoming a struggle. Having getting married is overcoming a struggle. It's like
yep,
that's the journey, right? And so
yeah,
playing guitar, being a missionary, all these things is hard, but it's worth it. I mean, would
yeah,
would you agree?
yep,
Yeah.
yep. I would agree with that totally.
Well, cool. So your website with donshipmanfiction.com,
Yes.
right? So how can people find you? Any other social media stuff, and just let us know kind of what you're doing next.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the website, and I just recently started blogging again, and which I haven't done for a long time, and it's on fantasy right now. I'm talking about fantasy as a literature and some different things, and I've got a couple other things coming up, and I've gotten some good feedback on that from some readers, so that was fun. And So I've got a prequel to the trilogy. There are questions that I left unanswered in the trilogy. They're not big things. You could close the book at the end and go, "Oh, that's nice." But there are a few things if you really look at it. And the prequel was supposed to try to address some of those questions and those issues. So I'm working on that, and it's a very fun story. There's battle scenes though, and I'm not much of a battler,
Mm.
so I'm really having to do some struggling with how I work in the battles. Plus, I have to make sure I don't forget what I said in the other books and say something completely different in this one.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, there's a few issues there, but I'm doing that. And I recently joined a group here in my neighborhood, or I mean, a town not far from here, and it's a secular group, but they're doing an anthology, and I've been invited to write a short story and for their anthology.
Wonderful.
And so I'm doing that. So that's something new and different. But it's yeah, so that's exciting doing that. And yeah, and that's what's happening. So I'm just gonna keep on keeping on.
Fantastic. And so people can go to your website and then join your mailing list as well.
Yeah.
And you have a freebie for them is the mailing list.
Yeah, it's just a short story from the world of Argonia
Nice.
that happened before the books actually started. And it answers a couple things that, as you read the book later, you go, "Oh, okay, that's what that's about." But you can also read the book and not have read that and know and figure it out.
Which is
But
perfect.
yeah, so that's there, and yeah, and I'm over on Book Funnel and often jump in on some of Jesse's promos and have
Yeah.
found some newsletter people there, so that's been fun. And I have met more than I mean, talked to them more. Some of them people from all over the world, literally. I have a
Mhm.
person on my newsletter from uh, New Zealand.
Is that fantastic? Yeah.
I go, okay, and we've talked, not on email, but still,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, yeah, okay, it was in New Zealand.
That's
So
wonderful.
that's
Yeah.
what's happening.
Some of my favorite people are from New Zealand too. So,
Yeah, okay.
well, cool. It's been wonderful, chatting with you about your mission, and I just love this rich topic of just like, yeah, getting this book out there, getting the words out there, not being preachy, not being not overwhelming, but still giving the truth and loving on people, leaving a legacy, and just I love what you said, being on the adventure, and that's how it is. And so
Yeah,
it's just such an honor talking with you and hearing more about your story. People can buy your books on your website, and yeah, anything else you want to say to kind of close this out before
well,
we?
just thanks so much for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm loving seeing what you're doing out here too, Jesse. So keep on keeping on.
I will. Thank you very much. So, all right. Well, bless everybody who's been watching this, and bless you, Don,
Thanks.
and I'll have a good one.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Bye.